Thank you for joining me for another quick hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robin. I'm a concierge high performance psychologist providing luxury level support to executives, entrepreneurs, celebrities, and athletes. With me today, I have Catherine Fitzgerald. She is a writer, speaker, certified coach, and the founder of Brass Tacks with Heart Executive Coaching. She helps founders, owners, and C-suite executives and their teams to build businesses that fuel their lives and not consume them. I have Atif Aga. He's a technology specialist doing data analytics. He is also an avid runner and based in Chicago. Finally, I have Chelle Shapiro. She's a marketing strategist for wellness coaches and consultants and the author of the book, Loving Yourself Isn't Selfish. The question I have today, do you think that bullies at work are aware that they're bullies?
Wow. Something that I'm very mindful of as I reflect and continue on my journey is, one, what happened to those people that bully, that they are bullying in the first place, whether they realize it, that they're coming off that way intentionally or not. What have they gone through? Yeah, it sucks that if you've gotten bullied. I often felt very bullied, and I wonder what everybody else was thinking to even put them in that mindset. And that's what's coming up for me as we talk about bullying. I
do think we have to be careful not to gaslight ourselves by making it all about them and what's wrong with them. But so back to the question, do they realize it?
I'm going to say they don't see it in the same way that the receiver does. And I don't think that they think they are bullying. My gut instinct from my own life and my own experience is that comes from a lot of insecurity and a need to be right. That need to be right is driven by a deep-seated feeling of unworthiness. And I think that when someone is that vehement about their way or the highway, and they are bullying to other people to get their way or the highway, whether they consider all the options or not, it says way more about them than it does about the person they're bullying. And I don't think they're thinking at all about the receiver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of what's said. Whether getting inside of mind of a bully is kind of a tricky thing, because it's a different spectrum of things. Is it personally somebody's bullying someone else because they don't like them or just didn't start right with them? If you specifically focus on the workplace environment, I guess we have to focus what kind of culture that corporate or that company is really promoting. And are bullies being recognized and acknowledged for their success by putting other people down? You mentioned toxic work environment. We see that all the time. The people who may be very toxic, and I know Simon Sinek and some other people just recently talked about it too. People who are toxic, and sometimes they are seen as coming out strong and very clear, but they may be really climbing on other people. It's an important thing to understand what they might be thinking and why they're being encouraged. I think in most cases, they do know what they're doing, but they have their reasons. They have their reasons that help them justify their actions. And they think, well, that's the right way to do it, or maybe that's the only way to do it. And do they know? I think they do see that, because a lot of time people that they are trying to bully are in pain, are not feeling happy and not very smiling in front of them. And they see that. They should not really, unless they're really looking in a different direction, I think they would notice that. But they just see past through it because of their own reasons.
Mm-hmm. I do think that people may realize they're being mean or at least not kind. I'm not sure that they would label it bullying. And I wonder if that's because there's not a real clear, maybe we should talk about that. What is bullying?
In general, the way I describe it, someone who's trying to push someone unnecessarily without a specific reason, just to torture someone with maybe an intent to be dominating on that person by means that are not justified in so many ways, if seen in a public eye. I would see that as bullying. Everything else is competition. People do compete, and they're trying to shine against each other, and they're trying to do better than others. That's okay. But when you use the means that are in a public eye, very easily in a public eye would not be seen as okay, and that's what bullying is, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I think it falls very closely in with harassment. I was only thinking in a professional setting when I was talking earlier. And after listening to it's a broad spectrum, it kind of triggered me that I have a 13-year-old stepdaughter who's going through bullying in junior high. I wouldn't go back to junior high if you paid me $1 million, but it's the toughest time of life. But what is happening psychologically in junior high, I think, is they have a whole lot more complication with social media and all the other things, as I call it, the highlight reel of everybody's best day ever. It gets on social media, but then the reality of their life doesn't, and they're competing with each other over these highlight reels, and that deep-seated need to fit in. And it's almost like they target one person who is very bright and very able and all those things, but has a soft heart, and they just, and so I that to me is a different setting, different scenario than in the office or in the workplace, because we have very strict legal lines about how we interact in the office or in the workplace. And I think bullying in the workplace can feel okay if there's also this power imbalance. The bully is the boss and the team is not. And so I think there's, again, as you said, there is a lot of variables here that we just don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned something earlier, Catherine, about like when it's the bully's way or the highway kind of thing. And I think we've all seen that in the workplace on some level, where like you're putting somebody else down for your personal gain unnecessarily, whether their way is wrong or not, in air quotes, because you couldn't see it on the screen. I had this too low, but like their way might not be wrong. It's just different than your way. And you feel the need to call them out so that you can make yourself be the bigger person. And I do think that they know that they're doing that. And they've just gotten, for whatever reason, accustomed to that's how they show their strength and assert themselves. And for whatever reason, maybe it hasn't sunk in that, hey, there's a different way to go about this.
Yeah, it's an important distinction. I completely agree. I think it's an important distinction to see kids in college or school, and they are not fully mature. And then if they do not really get to their learning process, they may continue to act like that in an office environment in a certain capacity. So I agree with you, the HR and the workplaces are becoming more and more sophisticated in terms of what can be said, what should be done, and you can report it. There's open policy. There's a lot of things that are happening to improve the work situation among people and provide that guidelines. But in the end, it's just two people collaborating with each other, and the power pull takes over. One more thing I want to not miss saying that is we talked a lot about people who bully, but there's also a reflection on people who do get bullied. There is always some level of weakness in them in a certain way, and it may not be a bad thing, but there's there, and it sometimes reflects on what those weaknesses are. And I've seen that bullies sort of notice that, and they're really good in finding that out, so they can really use and push that forward.
I think what Catherine said about the soft heart, I think they look for someone who's not going to fight back.
Yeah.
And that weakness is I want to be kind. I've been taught to be kind. And I could tell stories that would just make you cry about how people treated me because I am soft. I look very strong. And so people think they can shoot arrows at me, and actually they hurt because I'm soft. And I think that is something that bullies look for. Who is it that they can go after?
I think, Chelle, you said you are an empath, and I think that being empathetic as a primary characteristic in your life can play double-edged sword in your life, because you do end up being the target in a lot of those situations, and I certainly have. Yeah,
absolutely. It's interesting when I have these conversations, I never have someone who says, oh, I was the bully. Everybody always says I was bullied. So that's interesting. I wonder if it's a self-selection thing, but that is our 10 minutes. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me about bullying in the workplace. And I look forward to speaking to each of you again really soon.
Thank
you.